Shabbat Shalom. It's so nice to be here with all of you tonight and this beautifully spirited services. It's like really marvelous. I wanted to start with a question. Do you ever remember a time when you were little, you got upset, you cried and ran to your room, slammed the door maybe behind you, and a few minutes later, your mother comes up to check on you. You're not ready to talk, you have no words. You're lying on the bed, maybe crying, maybe containing your rage, and she sits beside you and puts her hand on your back. Somehow, after a moment, you're okay. This is how I often picture the Shekhinah, the indwelling presence of God. Thank you. This is how I often picture the Shekhinah, the indwelling presence of God, coming to be with us when we feel most alone, when we feel we need to retreat and take quiet, experience our sorrows. This is when she comes. To the Kabbalists, the Shekhinah is the dimension of God that's closest to us here on earth, and they describe her as a bride, the Shabbat Queen. But to me, when I think about the Shabbat Queen, when I think about what experience makes Shabbat so special, I think about the work of our mothers, the meals that they prepare, the tables they set, the lights that they kindle. The feminine name for God, Shekhinah, comes from the same shoresh as Mishkan, the sanctuary, the tabernacle, the dwelling place for God, at the center of the Israelite camp as they wander through the wilderness. And in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, it's concerned with how we as a people can make our camp and the Mishkan a hospitable place for God, so that God's presence will dwell with us. We're given practices to ensure that the camp and sanctuary are ritually pure, tahor, and that impurity, tuma, is removed from the camp until it can be purified. But how do we make sense of these ideas of purity and impurity today? It feels really distant from our understanding of the world. Some of our greatest scholars answer this question, first of all, making very clear, impurity is not a moral judgment. There's nothing wrong with us if we have impurity. In fact, it makes us human. We all have it from time to time. All that's required is that we address it. So if there's an impurity that settles upon us, kind of like a miasma, it's not a tangible thing, then the requirements are that we address it. And it's not just that we address it alone, we address it as a camp. Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh. We all have a responsibility to make sure that the conditions of our environment are hospitable to God, that God will dwell with us. But why? Why is it the spectrum of purity and impurity that impact whether God will dwell with us? The Torah does not answer this question, so our scholars have theories. They say that ritual impurity emerges on the threshold between life and death. It emerges when we have glimpses or deep experiences of the human capacity to create life, and also when we see or suspect that a human life may be reaching its end. It's the threshold. And in this place, it can often be hard for us as humans to see the distinction between the domain of God and us. When we are experiencing creativity, sometimes we feel that surge and that energy. It's hard for us to remember to be humble. So tomorrow, we'll read from Vayikra a couple of passages that, if I'm honest, I find a little troubling, even knowing about these theories. We're going to read that when a mother gives birth, she is impure. And that is so hard I think, for us as contemporary people to imagine, because what is more sacred than the joyous experience when a mother brings a baby into this world? But this is where the threshold is between life and death. And this is where we see the awesome creative power that humans have. And that's where we're asked to bring our humility. We're also going to read tomorrow that a mother is impure for longer after she gives birth to a daughter than a son. In fact, double the amount of time. Why should it be that a daughter's birth makes the mother's purification process take double the time? What is it about a girl that creates such impurity? And this question raises other questions too. Why does Tanakh contain so few stories of mothers and daughters? So few I had to search my brain to think about it. Miriam and Yocheved we see together, and mostly they're concerned with saving Moshe. Ruth and Naomi, as bonded as they are not mother and daughter. And our most famous daughters, their mothers are barely present. Dinah, the daughters of Tzlofchad and Yiftach and Tamar. It's kind of like in fairy tales. The mother is always gone. The daughter is always alone. She might have an evil stepmother, or her grandmother gets devoured by a wolf. If she's lucky, she has a fairy godmother, but she never has her own mother. Why? As Jewish women, and as we see beautifully tonight, we have vibrant, colorful, delicious traditions passed on from mother to daughter. But our texts can leave these out. Our relationships can be unseen at times, and daughterhood can be presented as a fate to weather. And yet we have an innovation from our rabbis. In the Jerusalem Talmud, we're told, after the last prophets of Tanakh died, the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, departed from them, from the people of Israel, and it came to be understood that prophecy had ended. And yet, the Talmud goes on to say, they were able to access the Bat Kol. What is a Bat Kol? Translators of rabbinic texts tend to translate the Bat Kol as a disembodied voice, a heavenly voice, a divine voice. But it's literally translated as daughter of a voice, maybe even if you stretch it, a daughter voice. What do you imagine a Bat Kol might sound like? A sound that is the daughter of a voice. Maybe we imagine it's a quiet, small, meek whisper, the kind of voice, as in the Kol Demama Daka, that is so quiet we fall into silence to hear it. Or maybe we hear a daughter's voice as loud, rebellious, resolute, the kind of voice as in Psalm 29 that can shatter cedars, kindle fires, make the wilderness tremble, twist, and dance. The Talmud tells us of the words that issue forth from the Bat Kol. Often, in a Talmudic story, the Bat Kol will come in to remark about an individual saying, giving rebuke or praise, or announcing that the individual is going to go to the world to come. But the Bat Kol also comes in to issue decrees. So one example that many of us might know and hear, the story of Hillel and Shammai. They have differing opinions, and a voice of God comes in to declare Elu ve'elu. Both of these are acceptable, but we're going to go with Hillel. And that voice of God is in the Talmud, the Bat Kol. Another example from decades later, Rabbi Eliezer is trying to convince all the other rabbis in his community that a point of halakha should go his way. They don't agree. He brings signs, wonders, miracles to prove that he's right on the point of halakha, and still the rabbis resist. Rabbi Eliezer says, if I'm right, the heavens will prove it. And a Bat Kol emerges, and it says to the rabbis, why are you disagreeing with Rabbi Eliezer when he's right on the halakha? And another rabbi, Rabbi Yeshua, stands up. He quotes Tanakh and says, it is not in heaven. Torah has been brought down to earth, and now prophecy has ended, and the temple has been destroyed, and the people are exiled, and it is for us, the people, to determine how Torah should be enacted. To this, God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, smiles and says, my sons have triumphed over me. The Bat Kol is a dimension of the divine voice. It does not dictate the ways of the world. Its decisions are not final, but it's real, it is impactful, and it must speak. So too for many of us daughters here on earth. Sometimes, like our mothers, we grow into our voices and our voices grow with us. Sometimes, like our mothers, we start to roar. When we look at our foremothers in Tanakh, we can sometimes hear them, but often their voices are missing. It's left to us to try to listen for their shouts, trembles, and whispers, the voices that sound like silence but have yet to be unearthed. And as we listen, we can feel the sanctity in both the Shekhinah and the Bat Kol, the mother's touch, the daughter's voice. Both are necessary for a society in which God dwells among us. This week's Parsha urges us to consider when the female presence should withdraw from the camp. This can feel like a painful mandate, and yet it's also maybe a recognition. Yes, mothers and daughters have been outside the Jewish camp for longer than sons, longer than fathers. But sometimes it's when we remove ourselves that our most precious and connected moments unfold. In the privacy of our own spaces, a mother's hand on a daughter's back, tears that fall, tears that dry, and then smiles. A daughter's voice speaking what she hears in her mother's silence, and eternally they kindle the flames of Shabbat and sing together. Shabbat Shalom.